Okay, let's unpack this because it's quite something. Imagine a future, maybe not too distant, where secrets collected today, right now, can be effortlessly unlocked tomorrow, even if they're protected by the strongest encryption systems we have currently. I mean, it really does sound like science fiction, doesn't it? But for global security, for your personal data, for everything that relies on digital trust, it's a very real and frankly, pretty immediate danger. We really are standing at a technological crossroads. So today, we're diving deep into this fascinating and yet a bit unsettling intersection of unprecedented computational power and what really amounts to an existential threat to our entire digital security infrastructure. We're talking about distributed quantum computing, DQC for short, and the urgent global response that's underway, Post-Quantum Cryptography, or PQC. Our mission in this deep dive is to basically journey through this complex landscape together.
We want to understand exactly how these quantum computers are evolving, why these advancements fundamentally threaten the digital trust we all rely on, and, maybe most importantly, what the world is doing right now to try and build a quantum-resilient future. And this isn't just about, cool tech. It's really about national security. It's about economic competitiveness. And it's about the very foundation of how we interact and trust each other digitally.
What's so critical here, and what I really want you, the listener, to take away, is that the very advancements promising these revolutionary breakthroughs like DQC's ability to solve problems that are currently just impossible for classical computers are simultaneously introducing a massive systemic risk, a risk to the digital infrastructure you rely upon every single day. Think about your online banking, your private health records, classified government communications, a company's vital intellectual property. I mean, everything. It's all underpinned by cryptographic principles that are now, well, becoming vulnerable. This isn't some distant theoretical what-if scenario playing out in labs. It's really a what is happening scenario unfolding now. It's a challenge demanding immediate strategic response from everyone. So this deep dive, it's kind of your shortcut to getting your head around a really complex, high-stakes topic, one that will absolutely redefine the digital landscape. We want to equip you with the knowledge to grasp both the urgency and the solutions being developed.
But here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit paradoxical, right? We're at this pivotal moment. On one side, you have the pursuit of quantum mechanics, unlocking just unprecedented computational power. Imagine like revolutionary breakthroughs in drug discovery, developing new materials we can't even conceive of now, or maybe AI advancement solving some of humanity's biggest problems. It's a horizon of incredible potential, truly. But, and this is the huge but, this exact same power forces a fundamental, a ground-up reevaluation of global cybersecurity as we know it. It really is a classic dual-edged sword. Immense progress on one side, profound risk on the other.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the development of quantum computing, while undeniably offering these amazing solutions across science and industry, simultaneously threatens to just dismantle the cryptographic principles that have secured our digital communications and data for decades. And like you said, this isn't a what if. It's not theoretical, not something maybe happening way down the line. It's a present-day challenge. It demands a kind of dual-track strategic response. One track has to boldly embrace the quantum innovation because the potential is just too great. But the other track, equally important, has to be fortifying our digital defenses against its impending threats. We really can't have one without seriously considering the other.
So, okay, the big question then. When do we actually hit this quantum crossroads? When does our current, trusted encryption become truly vulnerable? When does this shift from being a serious concern to, active emergency?
Well, expert estimates generally suggest that a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, let's call it a CRQC for short, might emerge within the next 10 to 15 years. Now, that's an estimate, of course, and new technological breakthroughs could potentially accelerate that timeline even further. It's not a fixed date on the calendar, but it's a powerful estimate that really underscores the urgency. And just to be clear, a CRQC means a quantum computer that is powerful enough to break modern asymmetric cryptography. That's the backbone, the foundation of most of our current digital security. Everything from secure websites, the little padlock icon, to protecting your emails and financial transactions. So this time frame, this 10-15-year window, maybe sooner, means the threat isn't hypothetical anymore. It's an immediate, tangible risk management problem for basically everyone. We're not talking about decades to make this fundamental shift, but maybe just a decade, perhaps even less, before our current digital fortresses could just crumble.
Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty tight deadline when you think about the scale of the systems involved. So, okay, if quantum computers are so inherently powerful, what's the big hurdle then? Why do we need to talk about distributed ones? Why can't we just build one giant, super powerful quantum machine and be done with it?
Yeah, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? The realization of a truly powerful universal quantum computer faces this just formidable engineering challenge: scalability. Current quantum hardware, is demonstrating impressive capabilities with, say, tens or even hundreds of qubits, those fundamental units of quantum information. But it struggles immensely when trying to increase that number significantly into the thousands or millions needed for code breaking. The problem is the inherent fragility of these qubits. As you add more, maintaining their delicate quantum states becomes exponentially more difficult. One of the biggest enemies here is something called quantum decoherence. That's where a qubit loses its unique quantum properties, its ability to be in multiple states at once, or entangled because it interacts with its environment. Even tiny things like subtle electromagnetic fields or thermal fluctuations, basically noise, can cause it to lose that quantumness. This noise introduces errors and drastically limits what we call the coherence time, which is the crucial window during which a qubit can reliably hold its quantum state and perform computations. Add to that the inherently high error rates of the quantum gates, the logical operations you perform on the qubits, and you can start to see why building a single, massive, reliable quantum chip is just a monumental, maybe even impossible task with current approaches.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like trying to build a single city-sized classical computer chip.
Yeah.
You just run into fundamental physical limits.
Exactly. Think about it that way. Trying to build a classical supercomputer by just making one single monolithic chip would hit physical limits almost immediately: heat, manufacturing complexity, just maintaining functionality. So instead, what do? Classical supercomputers are built from clusters of smaller, interconnected machines. DQC, distributed quantum computing, is essentially applying that same modular networked approach to quantum systems. It connects smaller, more stable quantum processors, we call them nodes, and then distributes the computational workloads among them. This is a really clever solution, actually. It allows us to overcome those physical constraints of trying to build one giant, perfect quantum device. It makes it possible to create much larger, effective quantum circuits with a greater number of qubits without sacrificing the necessary fidelity and low error rates you need for complex calculations. It's really seen as the most viable path towards true quantum scalability.
That analogy helps a lot. So if we're distributing these quantum processors, these nodes, how do they actually talk to each other? How do these smaller pieces become one giant quantum brain, so to speak? What makes a quantum network different from the regular internet connection I have right now?
Right, it's a whole different ballgame. An effective DQC system requires several critical components working together perfectly to connect these local quantum processors into a cohesive, high-performance computational entity. First, you have the quantum nodes themselves. These are the individual quantum processors. They can be based on various physical implementations. You hear about superconducting qubits, trapped ions, photonic qubits, and others. Each type has its own pros and cons, but regardless of their physical basis, these nodes perform the local quantum operations and, crucially, must be capable of communicating quantum information with other nodes in the network. And a big challenge there is ensuring these potentially different types of nodes can actually speak the same quantum language, given they might have varying coherence times, operating temperatures, and gate fidelities. Interoperability is key.
Okay, so you have the processing nodes. Then how do they connect?
That's the second piece: robust quantum communication links. These are essential for connecting the processors, and they rely on really unique quantum principles like quantum entanglement and quantum teleportation to transfer these incredibly fragile quantum states between distant nodes. Entanglement, as you might know, is that peculiar quantum phenomenon where two or more particles become linked, deeply connected, such that measuring one instantaneously influences the others, no matter how far apart they are. It's like they have a secret connection. It's a crucial resource for quantum information transfer. These links often use pairs of entangled photons, particles of light as the physical medium, and a huge amount of research goes into generating these pairs reliably and distributing them efficiently through optical fibers or even free space.
Entanglement, okay. But you mentioned distance is still a problem, right? Like fiber optics have limits.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third vital component, especially for longer distances: quantum repeaters. Transmitting these fragile quantum states over long distances, say hundreds or thousands of kilometers, is incredibly challenging. Photons carrying qubits can easily be absorbed or scattered in a standard fiber optic cable. This typically limits direct quantum transmission to maybe 50 to 100 kilometers, which isn't very far in a global network. Now, here's the key difference from classical networks. Unlike a classical repeater that just boosts or amplifies a signal, quantum mechanics has this fundamental rule called the no cloning theorem. It means you absolutely cannot simply copy an unknown quantum state without destroying it, so you can't just amplify it like a classical signal. So quantum repeaters employ a completely different strategy. They use really clever techniques like entanglement swapping, quantum memory to hold states briefly, and quantum error correction. Essentially, they break a long distance into shorter segments. They create entanglement between the repeater nodes across these segments, and then they swap the entanglement from one segment to the next, like passing a baton in a quantum relay race. This allows them to relay quantum states faithfully across vast distances without ever needing to directly measure or copy the original fragile information. It dramatically extends the reach of quantum communication far beyond the limits of direct transmission. It's a truly elegant, if mind-bending, solution.
Mind-bending is right. That sounds incredibly complex and honestly still feels quite theoretical even with the explanation. Is anyone actually building this in the real world, or is it mostly confined to, university labs and research papers right now?
Oh, absolutely not just theoretical. The theoretical underpinnings are being validated daily through active research and development worldwide. We're seeing a clear and rapid trajectory toward a networked quantum future. This isn't just speculation, it's genuinely happening. For instance, scientists at Oxford University's Department of Physics achieved a really significant stride towards practical large-scale systems. They successfully linked two separate quantum processors using photonic links, essentially creating a single unified quantum computer from two smaller pieces. What was groundbreaking was that they demonstrated the teleportation of a logical quantum gate between them. That means they moved a fundamental error-corrected building block of a quantum algorithm, not just a raw, fragile Coué state. And they did it with an impressive 86% fidelity. This work directly tackles that scalability problem by proving that smaller quantum devices can be effectively linked together while preserving the delicate quantum properties needed for accurate computation.
Okay, so academic labs are making progress. What about governments or industry?
Definitely. The U.S. government, through agencies like DARPA and NIST, is heavily invested. NIST researchers, for example, have demonstrated creating quantum entanglement between distant, time-synchronized network nodes with over 90% probability and incredible precision within 4 picoseconds. That shows amazing control. Meanwhile, DARPA's QuantET program is focused squarely on the practical integration of quantum systems into existing classical communications infrastructure. They're aiming to standardize quantum information channels and develop what they call quantum-augmented networks. These networks would support things like transmitting quantum time synchronization signals or quantum sensing data, really paving the way for hybrid systems where quantum and classical technologies work side by side interoperably. And industry leaders like IBM have also profoundly shifted their strategy. They've moved away from just focusing on cramming more qubits onto a single chip, which hits those limits we talked about, towards a more nuanced modular approach. Their quantum-centric supercomputing model uses exactly this modular strategy, connecting processors and optimizing the communication between quantum and classical components. Their Heron processor and its associated chiplet architecture are prime examples. They're scaling quantum power by linking smaller, high-fidelity chips together. So yes, this is absolutely moving from the whiteboard to reality, and the pace is picking up fast.
Okay, so on one hand, DQC is clearly helping us build bigger, more powerful quantum computers, which sounds fantastic for scientific progress, drug discovery, all that good stuff. But on the other hand, you mentioned earlier, it also connects directly back to the security threat. Could you unpack that connection a bit more? It really does feel like the solution to one big problem might be fueling the next big problem.
That's a critical insight, and you've hit upon the profound and, frankly, quite direct connection between DQC development and the cryptographic threat. It's not an accidental side effect. It's fundamental. DQC's core purpose, its raison d'etre, is to solve the very scalability and error correction problems that currently prevent the existence of a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, a CRQC. The ability to create a larger quantum circuit with more qubits by networking smaller processors together is precisely what is needed to execute Shor's algorithm efficiently, the algorithm that can break our current public key encryption. So the ongoing research and development in DQC and quantum networking aren't just advancing quantum computing in general, they're actively, directly accelerating the arrival of the cryptographic threat. It makes the whole PQC migration effort a matter of present-day urgency, not just some future-proofing exercise.
Wow. Okay, so the tools being built to advance science are the same tools that can break our security.
Exactly. And moreover, the infrastructure and the technologies being developed for DQC have this powerful dual-use nature. Quantum networks, with their reliance on entanglement distribution and quantum repeaters, are being designed to link quantum computers together for computation, and they are simultaneously being designed to facilitate ultra-secure communication through protocols like quantum key distribution or QKD. Countries like Canada and China, for example, are investing very heavily in QKD as a national defense capability. They see it as a way to create truly unhackable communication channels, at least in theory, based on the laws of physics. This shared infrastructure means that advancements in one domain, say developing a more efficient quantum repeater for networking computers, simultaneously benefit the other domain, secure communication. This fusion of computational and communication capabilities positions quantum networking as a really critical piece of national infrastructure. It has profound implications for both economic competitiveness and national security, making it an incredibly high-stakes arena for geopolitical competition.
It certainly sounds like quantum computing has moved far beyond the lab and squarely onto the geopolitical stage, almost like a new kind of arms race, wouldn't you say? Who's leading the charge here, and what are the implications of this global competition?
Absolutely. That's not an exaggeration. The pursuit of quantum computing has transcended academic research to become a new frontier of geopolitical competition. Full stop. It's now viewed as a critical future military enabler, right alongside artificial intelligence and hypersonics and the defense strategies of major global powers. The nation that first achieves a large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computing capability would gain a truly decisive advantage. It could fundamentally alter the balance of power in the 21st century. This race isn't just about scientific prestige or bragging rights. It carries very real, tangible implications for economic dominance and military strength. Some experts explicitly describe this capability as giving a palpable military advantage in cryptology, detection, and information processing. It's a serious game.
Given this global race for quantum supremacy, how are different nations actually approaching the challenge? Are their strategies similar, or are we seeing different paths emerge? Because different paths could cause even more issues down the road, right?
We're definitely seeing distinct national approaches, and yes, this divergence itself creates interesting and potentially problematic dynamics. China, for instance, leads the world in state-driven quantum funding. Estimates put their direct investment around $15 billion, and they manage a massive tech venture fund of around $138 billion, a significant portion of which is likely targeted at quantum and related fields. This aggressive top-down approach has enabled China to make significant strides, particularly in quantum communication. They've deployed a national-scale quantum key distribution (QKD) network spanning over 2,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable, plus 2 communication satellites. And this isn't just experimental. It's reportedly actively used for secure communications with countries like Russia and South Africa, showcasing an immediate, tangible application of quantum tech for national security goals.
Okay, so China is very state-driven, focusing heavily on QKD. What about the U.S.?
The United States approach is quite different. It's largely driven by its incredibly robust private sector and its leading academic institutions, with federal investment playing more of a coordinating and supporting role. You have tech giants like IBM, Google, Microsoft, Intel, plus specialized players like D-Wave Quantum, IonQ, Quantinuum, all at the forefront of innovation. D-Wave, for example, has already demonstrated commercial quantum advantages in specific areas like logistics optimization using their annealing approach. Federal investment is significant, around $6 billion through various initiatives, but it's perceived by some experts as lagging China's massive state-backed funding push. The U.S. government actively coordinates efforts through the National Quantum Initiative, NQI, and various national security memorandums to promote research, build a workforce, and importantly, mitigate the risks, especially the cryptographic threat.
And the EU, how do they fit in?
The European Union is also investing billions in quantum technology through programs like the Quantum Flagship. Their focus is strongly on achieving technological sovereignty through collaborative efforts across member states. However, Europe faces a challenge in attracting private venture capital compared to the U.S. Despite having a substantial number of quantum startups, recent reports indicated Europe captured only about 5% of global quantum investments compared to roughly 50% for the U.S. This highlights a potential gap between research prowess and commercialization scale.
So we have these different approaches, particularly China focusing on QKD networks and the U.S. emphasizing PQC software solutions. What's the risk there?
That divergence is actually a significant geopolitical risk in itself. China's focus on QKD, which is essentially a physical layer security solution based on quantum physics, versus the US's primary emphasis on post-quantum cryptography, PQC, which involves developing new mathematical algorithms that are resistant to quantum attacks. While these are fundamentally different approaches, they could lead to incompatible secure communication systems globally. Imagine a future where allied governments, especially militaries that depend heavily on secure, interoperable communications, can't securely talk to each other because they've adopted different, incompatible, quantum-safe standards. The result could be a fragmented global communication infrastructure, hindering collaboration and creating security gaps. This really highlights the urgent need for international coordination and standardization efforts, like the NIST PQC process, to try and prevent this fragmentation of the global digital landscape.
So this geopolitical race clearly has very real and frankly quite concerning consequences today. Is this harvest now, decrypt later's tactic we keep mentioning just a theoretical fear? Or is it something that's actually happening out there, actively compromising our data right now?
No, it's absolutely not just theoretical. The geopolitical race fuels real-world consequences today, and the harvest now, decrypt later strategy is a prime active example of that. Nation-state actors who are typically well-funded by governments, incredibly persistent, and often motivated by long-term strategic goals rather than immediate financial gain, are already employing highly sophisticated cyber espionage tactics. Their objectives are broad: disrupting critical infrastructure, stealing state secrets, pilfering valuable intellectual property, gathering intelligence, gaining economic advantage, and a key tactic confirmed by multiple intelligence agencies and cybersecurity firms is indeed harvest now, decrypt later, or HNDL. They are actively siphoning off and collecting vast quantities of encrypted data from compromised systems today. They're storing it in massive data archives with the full expectation and intent of decrypting it later once a sufficiently powerful, cryptographically relevant quantum computer becomes available.
Can you give an example? Who's doing this?
Well, numerous reports over the years have documented activities attributed to various state actors. For example, intelligence reports and cybersecurity analyses have detailed specific tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, associated with Chinese state-sponsored actors targeting telecommunications companies and internet service providers. These TTPs often involve quietly collecting bulk network traffic, backing up sensitive device configurations, and exfiltrating large volumes of data, much of it encrypted. The data stolen through this kind of activity, if stored and later decrypted by CRQC, could provide intelligence services with an unprecedented ability to retrospectively identify and track targets' communications, movements, relationships, and plans over long periods. So this isn't a future threat scenario. The harvest is demonstrably underway right now, and the clock is ticking on the long-term security of data that needs to remain confidential for years or even decades.
That's genuinely chilling, thinking about data just sitting there waiting to be unlocked. What's a major weakness, then, that we really need to consider in defending against this immediate and ongoing HNDL threat? Where are we most vulnerable?
The supply chain. It's consistently identified as a particularly critical vulnerability in this threat model, often described as the soft underbelly or the Achilles heel. Nation-state actors are increasingly sophisticated in exploiting third-party partners, vendors, and even software suppliers as a backdoor into their primary targets, whether that's a government agency, a defense contractor, or a large corporation. Think about it. Maybe a university researcher working on a sensitive government contract. Their university network might have less stringent security protocols than the core government agency itself, providing an easier entry point for an attacker to steal valuable research data or intellectual property. That stolen data could then be subjected to HNDL. This means that an organization's post-quantum cryptography readiness, its overall security posture, is ultimately only as strong as the weakest link in its entire supply chain ecosystem. Consequently, preparing for PQC isn't just an internal IT security project. It absolutely has to be a strategic, cross-organizational imperative that includes robust risk assessments of all partners, vendors, software providers, and even their subcontractors to ensure a truly secure posture from end to end.
Okay, let's maybe unpack the threat itself a bit more technically now. We've talked about this looming danger, but what exactly are the quantum algorithms that pose such a huge, you called it existential, danger to our current encryption systems? Can you simplify how they work without us needing PhDs in quantum physics?
Right, let's try. There are two specific quantum algorithms that are the main culprits here, and they attack different types of cryptography. First, and most famously, there's Shor's algorithm. Peter Shor developed this way back in 1994. Its superpower is that it can efficiently factor large integers into their prime components, and it can also solve something called the discrete logarithm problem. Now, why does that matter? Because the security of today's most widely used public key encryption schemes, things like RSA, Reveshimir-Adelman, and ECC, elliptic curve cryptography, relies entirely on the fact that these mathematical tasks are extremely, prohibitively difficult for any classical computer, even the biggest supercomputers we have. But a sufficiently powerful quantum computer running Shor's algorithm could potentially break a standard 2048-bit RSA key, the kind used everywhere online in perhaps a matter of hours or days. That's a task that would literally take the best classical supercomputers thousands, maybe millions of years. So Shor's poses an existential threat to all use cases of asymmetric cryptography. That includes secure web traffic, HTTPS, digital signatures used for verifying software or document authenticity, and the entire public key infrastructure, PKI, that underpins digital trust online. It's a complete game changer, basically rendering them useless.
Okay, Shor's hits public key crypto. What's the other one?
The second one is Grover's algorithm, proposed by Grover in 1996. This algorithm is different. It provides what's called a quadratic speedup for searching unsorted databases or lists. Think of it like finding a specific item in a massive, completely disorganized phone book much, much faster than checking every entry one by one. Now, Grover's doesn't directly break symmetric key encryption like the Advanced Encryption Standard, AES, which we use for encrypting files or data at rest in the same catastrophic way. Shor's breaks asymmetric schemes. However, it does significantly reduce its effective security strength. How? By making brute force key searches much faster. Essentially, a quantum attack using Grover's algorithm could effectively halve the cryptographic bit strength of a symmetric key. So, for example, an AES 128 key, which is considered quite secure today, would effectively only offer the security level of a 64-bit key against a Grover attack, which is easily breakable. An AES 256 key's security would be reduced to the equivalent strength of AES 128. Fortunately, the countermeasure for Grover's is relatively straightforward. You just need to double the key size of your symmetric encryption schemes. So the recommendation is generally to migrate from AES 128 to AES 256 to maintain an acceptable level of security in a post-quantum world.
That's incredibly sobering, especially the impact of Shor's. So what does this all mean for us today, practically speaking? If these powerful quantum computers, the CRQCs, don't fully exist yet in a way that can run these algorithms reliably at scale, how does this impact our current digital lives right now?
The most pressing, the most immediate concern is precisely that HNDL threat model, the harvest now, decrypt later strategy we keep circling back to, because it's not theoretical. Intelligence assessments indicate it's actively employed by nation-state actors and potentially other sophisticated malicious parties right now. The strategy, just to reiterate, involves intercepting and collecting vast quantities of encrypted data today, data that is perfectly secure today without attempting to break it immediately. Attackers then simply store this data, perhaps for years, in massive archives, anticipating that a future CRQC will eventually give them the key to unlock it all at will, even if that's 5, 10, or 15 years down the road. And they are particularly targeting datasets with a long required confidentiality, lifetime information that needs to remain secret for many years, potentially decades. Think about sensitive medical records, valuable long-term intellectual property like drug formulas or proprietary algorithms, detailed financial histories, classified military or intelligence secrets, or huge databases of personally identifiable information, PII.
Right, data that's still valuable years from now.
Exactly, and the insidious nature of this HNDL threat is that it creates a dangerous false sense of security. On the surface, no breach seems to have occurred. No alarms are triggered, no systems are down. Your current encryption is working perfectly today. Yet your most valuable long-term data could already be compromised, sitting silently in an adversary's data store, just waiting for the day the quantum decryption key becomes available. This is why the time to act, to start migrating to PQC, is now. The harvest is currently underway, and the window to defend data that needs long-term protection is closing rapidly. This isn't a problem we can kick down the road. It's a current and active threat demanding immediate attention and strategic planning.
It really does feel like a race against time, as you say. But what's the actual equation here? How do we measure this risk properly? When does an organization know if it's truly safe from this future decryption threat?
That's a critical question, and it gets to the heart of the asymmetry of time and risk in this PQC transition. It's often described using a concept sometimes called Mosca's theorem, named after Dr. Mikhail Mosca, a prominent quantum computing expert. The core idea is that the threat isn't some distant event. It's a present-day risk management problem that demands immediate calculation and action. To assess your safety for specific data, you need to consider three key time variables. First, there's the time it will take for your specific organization to discover all its cryptographic systems and migrate them completely to post-quantum cryptography standards, let's call that time Y, for years to migrate. Second, there's the time your most sensitive data needs to remain confidential. Its required security shelf life, let's call that X, for expiration time of data. And third, there's the estimated time until a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, CRQC, becomes a reality and can break current encryption. Let's call that Z. For zombie quantum apocalypse, maybe not, but Z for the threat arrival.
Okay, X, Y, and Z, how do they relate?
The crucial insight, the theorem, states that for your data to remain secure against this future threat, the sum of X, how long your data needs to be secret, plus Y, how long it takes you to migrate, must be less than Z when the threat arrives. So, X plus Y, Z, let's take an example. If your critical intellectual property needs to be confidential for 15 years, X of 15, and your organization estimates a full PQC migration will take 5 years, Y 5, but the consensus estimate for a CRQC arriving is, say, 10 years, Z 10. Then X plus Y equals 20, which is greater than Z 10. In this scenario, your data is already at risk from H&DL. Even if you start migrating today, the quantum threat is projected to arrive before your data's confidentiality requirement expires, plus your migration time is complete. What this means in very practical terms is that delaying the start of your PQC migration planning and execution is an active decision to accept an unmitigated risk to your most valuable, long-lived data. It forces a very stark calculation about risk tolerance and the true cost of inaction.
Wow, that X plus Y, Z equation really brings it home. So is this primarily about keeping secrets secret, about confidentiality? Or is there a broader, maybe more fundamental impact if this foundational public key cryptography fails? What happens to the internet, to digital trust as we know it, if this goes wrong?
That's a great point to connect this to the bigger picture. The vulnerability of asymmetric cryptography, thanks to Shor's algorithm, has implications that go far, far beyond just simple data confidentiality. It's much bigger than just keeping secrets. If Shor's algorithm were run on a capable CRQC and broke our foundational public key cryptography, like RSA and ECC, it would effectively compromise the entire infrastructure of digital trust that we've painstakingly built over the last few decades. The whole system relies on it. For example, attackers could forge digital signatures with impunity. Imagine the chaos if you couldn't trust the authenticity of a legal contract signed digitally, or a financial transaction confirmation, or even the identity verification used for accessing critical systems or services. It undermines authenticity and non-repudiation. They could also create fake security certificates for websites, the things that give you the HTTPS padlock. This would allow them to perform sophisticated man-in-the-middle attacks, directing legitimate traffic to malicious sites without any warning to the user, capturing credentials, financial details, anything. It breaks the secure connection we rely on constantly. Or they could impersonate trusted software vendors to distribute malware through seemingly legitimate software updates. Your computer thinks it's getting a patch from Microsoft or Apple, but it's actually malicious code. The resulting erosion of trust in these fundamental digital systems would have absolutely devastating consequences across virtually all critical sectors: finance, healthcare, government operations, e-commerce, even basic internet communication. It really underscores the urgency of developing and deploying a coordinated, comprehensive defense strategy that extends far beyond just keeping stored data private. It's about preserving the very integrity and trustworthiness of our increasingly digital world.
Okay, this sounds like a monumental problem, maybe one of the biggest technological challenges we've ever faced. So, what's the solution? How do we even begin to build new quantum-safe encryption systems that can actually withstand these incredibly powerful future threats?
It is a huge challenge, but the good news is that a massive global effort is already well underway. In response to this looming existential threat, the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, has spearheaded a truly remarkable global public competition-like process. This started way back in 2016. It involved a huge worldwide collaboration. Cryptographers, mathematicians, and security experts from academia, industry, and government labs all around the globe submitted their best candidate algorithms designed to be resistant to quantum attacks. There were hundreds submitted initially. These submissions then underwent years of incredibly rigorous public cryptanalytic review. The entire global cryptographic community basically tried their best to find flaws to break these candidate algorithms in a very open and transparent process. This methodical, collaborative, and incredibly transparent approach culminated just recently in August 2024 with the official release of the first 3 PQC standards. And then they selected an additional algorithm for standardization in March 2025. This whole process is designed not only to ensure the technical robustness and practical usability of the final standards, but also to build global confidence and consensus by leveraging the collective intelligence and intense scrutiny of the world's best cryptographers. It's really a model for how to tackle such a critical global challenge.
That's genuinely great to hear. There's such a coordinated global effort behind this. So what exactly are these new quantum-resistant standards that NIST picked? And how do they actually work differently from our current encryption? Can you give us a sense of what's under the hood, maybe without getting totally bogged down in the complex math?
Absolutely. NIST has very strategically standardized a portfolio of algorithms, not just one, and they're based on different underlying mathematical principles. This is a crucial choice, like having multiple types of defenses to build a diverse and resilient cryptographic ecosystem. Think of it as relying on several different kinds of incredibly complex, quantum-resistant mathematical puzzles, hoping at least some will remain hard even for quantum computers. So the first standard for key encapsulation mechanisms, chems, which are used to establish shared secret keys for encryption, is ML-Chem, Crystal's Kuiper. It's now standardized as FIPS 203. Its security is based on what are called lattice problems. You can sort of imagine trying to find the shortest path or a specific hidden point within an incredibly dense, high-dimensional, and intentionally obscured grid or lattice. These problems are believed to be extremely hard for both classical and quantum computers. ML-Chem is considered a strong candidate for general-purpose encryption because it offers good performance with relatively small keys and fast operation compared to some other PQC options.
Okay, lattice-based for key exchange. What about digital signatures?
For digital signatures which provide authenticity and integrity, the primary standard is MLDSA, Crystal's dilithium, published as FIPS 204. Like Kuiper, its security is also rooted in the computational hardness of lattice problems. It's designed as a general-purpose digital signature algorithm suitable for most common use cases.
So two primary standards based on lattices. You mentioned diversity was important.
Exactly. That's why NIST also standardized SLHDSA Svalase Plus, which is now FIPS 205. This is a completely different type of signature scheme. It's a stateless, hash-based signature. Its security comes from the well-understood difficulty of inverting cryptographic hash functions. Think of it like trying to reconstruct a document just by looking at its unique digital fingerprint, the hash. It's a very different mathematical foundation from lattices. SASE Plus offers very conservative, robust security, relying on older, well-trusted cryptographic primitives. This makes it an ideal backup and particularly suitable for long-term security applications like signing software updates or for root certificate authorities, even though it comes with the trade-off of having a significantly larger signature sizes compared to dilithium.
And there's one more selected recently.
Yes, in March 2025, NIST selected HQC, Hamming quasi-cyclic, as an additional chem algorithm intended as a backup or alternative to ML-Chem Kuiper. HQC is a code-based scheme, meaning its security is based on the difficulty of decoding certain types of error-correcting codes. This provides yet another layer of algorithmic diversity, relying on a third distinct mathematical family. NIST plans to release a draft standard for HQC for public comment soon, with a final standard anticipated probably around 2027. So this multi-pronged approach, lattices, hashes, codes, is really about not putting all our cryptographic eggs in one mathematical basket. It recognizes that cryptographic security is an ongoing challenge, and diversity provides resilience against unforeseen breakthroughs in cryptanalysis, whether classical or quantum.
That strategy makes a lot of sense. Why is this diversity so crucial? Were there any close calls or maybe major lessons learned during this whole NIST process that really highlighted the need for having multiple approaches, multiple mathematical families?
Oh, that's a truly insightful question. And yes, the vital importance of having this multi-algorithm diversified portfolio was dramatically and perhaps somewhat alarmingly underscored by a very recent event. The unexpected collapse of a very promising PQC candidate algorithm called Supersingular Isogeny Key Exchange, or SIKE. SIKE was actually a finalist in the later rounds of the NIST competition. It was seen as a strong contender, particularly attractive because it offered unusually compact key sizes compared to many other PQC candidates, which is highly desirable for practical implementation in constrained environments like IoT devices. However, in July 2022, researchers published a devastating key recovery attack that completely broke the SIKE algorithm. And here's the kicker. They did it in a matter of hours using just a single-core classical computer. No quantum computer needed. The attack cleverly exploited subtle mathematical properties related to auxiliary points used in SIKE's public keys, creating an unexpected vulnerability that bypassed its intended security assumptions.
Wow, broken by a classical computer after all that scrutiny.
Exactly. The psych failure serves as a powerful and humbling cautionary tale. It shows that even algorithms that have undergone years of significant public scrutiny by experts can still harbor unexpected, potentially catastrophic vulnerabilities, and not necessarily quantum ones. This event decisively validates NIST's conservative strategy of selecting multiple algorithms drawn from different mathematical families, lattices, hashes, codes. This approach mitigates the risk that a single, clever attack could compromise an entire class of cryptographic solutions, leaving us defenseless. And for organizations planning their migration, it's a key takeaway. A robust PQC migration strategy shouldn't be viewed as a one-time cutover to a single new silver bullet algorithm. Instead, it needs to be built around a flexible, crypto-agile framework, the ability to switch algorithms relatively easily that can adapt to future vulnerabilities or new cryptographic breakthroughs without requiring a massive disruptive system overhaul each time. Resilience through diversity and agility is the name of the game.
That psych story is a huge lesson learned for sure. It really drives home the need for that flexibility and not betting on just one horse. So, okay, we have these new algorithms, Kyber, Dilithium, Cestine CS plus Kalanchik HQC coming. What does this actually look like in terms of practical numbers compared to the crypto we use today? Are the keys bigger, smaller? Is performance affected? What's the real-world impact?
Right, let's look at some key characteristics to get a sense of the practical changes. And you'll notice some notable differences compared to our current classical standards like RSA or ECC. For ML-Chem, Kyber, which is our primary key encapsulation mechanism and is lattice-based, its public key size is typically around 1184 bytes, and the resulting ciphertext, the encrypted key, is around 38 bytes. Now compare that to a widely used classical key exchange like elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, ECDH, say with curve P256. Its public key is only 32 bytes, and the shared secret is also 32 bytes. So you can see Kyber's keys and ciphertext are significantly larger, maybe 30 to 40 times larger.
Okay, quite a bit bigger for key exchange. What about signatures?
For digital signatures, let's look at MLDSA, Dilithium, the primary lattice-based standard. Its public key size is around 1952 bytes, and the signature itself is about 3 to 309 bytes, again, larger than typical ECC signatures. Then you have SLHDSA, SynCS+, the hash-based backup signature. Interestingly, its public key size is very small, just 32 bytes, similar to classical keys. But the trade-off is that the signature size is much larger, around 856 bytes for the recommended parameter sets. It's quite big. And for HQC, the upcoming code-based Chem backup, the approximate public key size is around 262 bytes, and the approximate ciphertext size is about 2064 bytes again, larger than classical equivalents.
So the takeaway seems to be generally larger data sizes.
That's the key insight, yes. What's fascinating here is that while some public key sizes, like the one for CCS plus race, can remain quite small, the resulting signature sizes and the ciphertext sizes for the chems are generally significantly larger than their classical counterparts. And this isn't just a minor technical detail. It introduces significant new challenges for organizations that need careful consideration during migration planning. Think about the impact on network bandwidth, potential increases in latency for protocols that exchange these larger keys or signatures frequently, like TLS for websites, and definitely increased storage requirements for certificates, keys, and signed data. These are practical infrastructure impacts that might require upgrades and will certainly need to be tested and addressed as part of any PQC migration.
This transition sounds absolutely massive, especially considering those performance implications with larger key and signature sizes. Who's actually leading the charge on making this happen? And what's the general timeline we're looking at for this global shift? Is everyone aiming for the same deadline?
It is indeed a multi-year, truly global undertaking, far more complex and demanding than any previous cryptographic migration in history, like the move from DES to AES we might discuss later. Major governments and their national cybersecurity agencies are definitely leading the charge by issuing clear directives, phased roadmaps, and guidance for post-quantum cryptography migration within their jurisdictions, particularly for federal agencies and critical infrastructure. This reflects a broad international consensus on the urgency of the threat and the need for a structured, coordinated response. For example, in the United States, President Biden issued National Security Memorandum 10, NSM 10, back in 2022, which directed federal agencies to start preparing. This was followed by the Quantum Computing Cybersecurity Preparedness Act. Together, these require federal agencies to create a comprehensive inventory of their cryptographic systems and develop a timeline to transition to quantum-resistant cryptography, with a general target deadline often cited as 2035. Agencies like CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and DHS, Department of Homeland Security, have also published detailed roadmaps urging all organizations, public and private, not just federal ones, to start their preparations now.
Okay, so the U.S. is aiming for roughly 2035 for federal systems. What about other countries?
We're seeing similar timelines emerge elsewhere. Canada, through its Communications Security Establishment's Cyber Center, has provided a detailed three-phase roadmap for its federal departments. They need to develop a comprehensive migration plan by April 2026, complete the migration of high-priority systems by the end of 2031, and achieve full migration across all systems by the end of 2035. In the United Kingdom, the National Cybersecurity Center, NCSC, advises that large organizations should probably budget for a preparatory phase of 2-3 years just for discovery, assessment, and initial planning. They also align with a broader transition aiming for completion by 2035. And interestingly, even in the private sector, a major leader like Microsoft has publicly stated its internal roadmap aligns with these government timelines. They're aiming to complete the transition of their own services and products to PQC standards by 2033, potentially 2 years ahead of most government deadlines. So these converged timelines, generally clustering around the early to mid-2030s, really underscore that PQC migration is not a matter of if, but when. There's a broad consensus on the need for completion within roughly the next decade. The urgency is clear and widely recognized at high levels.
Okay, the timelines are converging around the next 10, 12 years. So if you're leading an organization, maybe a CISO or part of the IT and security teams, the sheer scale of this transition can feel incredibly daunting. Where do you even start? If someone listening wants to truly get ahead of this, what are the foundational, actionable steps they need to be thinking about right now?
That's the crucial question. A successful PQC strategy for any organization, regardless of size or sector, really rests on 5 core pillars. These provide a disciplined, structured approach to what will inevitably be a multi-year program. First, establish governance and leadership. This is non-negotiable. You absolutely need executive buy-in and sponsorship. PQC migration must be elevated beyond being seen as just a technical IT project. It has to be treated as a core business risk, right up there with financial or operational risks. A dedicated cross-functional PQC program office or equivalent steering committee should be established. This team needs clear leadership, ideally reporting directly to the CISO or CTO, and must include stakeholders from procurement, legal, risk management, finance, and key business units to ensure the effort is properly scoped, funded, prioritized, and aligned with overall business goals.
Okay, get the leadership and governance sorted. What's next?
Second, conduct a comprehensive cryptographic inventory. This is absolutely foundational. You need to identify, discover, and catalog all cryptographic assets across your entire organization. This means documenting the specific algorithms being used, RSA, ECC, AES, etc., the key sizes where certificates are stored and managed, the protocols employing cryptography like TLS, SSH, VPNs, and crucially, mapping all of this to the specific systems, IT systems, operational technology, OT and industrial settings, embedded devices, cloud services, third-party applications that use them. You simply cannot secure what you don't know you have, and for most large organizations, this discovery phase is often the messiest and most eye-opening step.
Right. Know thyself, cryptographically speaking. Pillar 3.
Third, prioritize by exposure and data lifetime. Once you have your inventory, you can't boil the ocean and migrate everything at once. The most critical strategic step in mitigating that harvest now, decrypt later threat is to prioritize your migration efforts. Focus first on the systems and applications that protect your most sensitive, long-lived, high-value data. Think about backups and archives containing historical data, critical intellectual property repositories, databases with long-term customer PII or health records. By prioritizing based on data sensitivity and required confidentiality lifetime, that X factor from our earlier equation, you ensure your resources are focused on protecting the most vulnerable assets first, aligning your migration strategy directly with your most pressing business risks.
Makes sense. Focus on the crown jewels first. What's pillar 4?
Fourth, enable crypto agility. This is a concept that's becoming increasingly critical. Crypto agility refers to the ability of a system or application to quickly and easily switch between different cryptographic primitives, algorithms, key sizes, protocols, without requiring a costly and disruptive redesign of its underlying infrastructure. It's essentially a critical defense mechanism against future vulnerabilities that might be discovered, even in these new PQC algorithms like Kyber or dilithium, remember, Psych. We can't assume today's PQC standards will be secure forever. Organizations should strive to design all new systems with crypto agility baked in from the ground up. For existing systems, the goal should be to update them where possible to make them as crypto agile as feasible, allowing for smoother transitions in the future.
Okay, agility is key for future-proofing. And the fifth pillar.
And fifth, implement hybrid and phased transitions. A big bang or one-shot cutover where you switch everything to PQC overnight is simply not a realistic migration strategy for an undertaking of this scale and complexity, especially in large heterogeneous environments. The widely recommended approach is a carefully planned, phased, and often hybrid deployment. Hybrid modes typically involve using both a classical algorithm, like RSA or ECC, and a PQC algorithm, like Kyber or dilithium, simultaneously during the transition period, perhaps for key exchange or signatures. This approach preserves interoperability with legacy systems or external partners who haven't migrated yet, while simultaneously introducing a quantum-safe layer of defense. It also hedges against any potential early implementation bugs or residual security risks associated with the newer, less battle-tested PQC algorithms. It allows for a gradual, controlled rollout.
Those 5 pillars make a lot of sense as a framework. But even with the plan, this sounds incredibly complex. What are the biggest technical and practical hurdles organizations are realistically going to face during this multi-year transition? What should they really be bracing for?
Oh, the scale is truly unprecedented. And yes, there are significant technical and economic challenges that organizations need to anticipate and plan for. One major category of hurdles relates to performance and scalability. As we discussed earlier, PQC algorithms often require significantly larger key sizes and signature sizes compared to their classical counterparts. That increase in data size isn't trivial. It can lead to higher data traffic volumes, congesting networks, increased latency in communication protocols, especially for interactive sessions like secure web browsing, and substantially higher storage demands for things like public key certificates, archived signed data, and key management systems. In some cases, this might necessitate significant upgrades to existing network infrastructure, servers, and storage systems, which cost time and money.
Okay, performance hits. What else?
Another huge challenge, maybe even bigger for many established organizations, is dealing with legacy systems and supply chain dependencies. A significant portion of the difficulty and cost will lie in updating or replacing older legacy systems, embedded devices, think medical devices, industrial controllers, IoT sensors, and long-lived hardware that simply cannot be easily upgraded to support the new algorithms. These devices might be severely resource-constrained, limited memory or processing power. They might use proprietary or hard-coded cryptographic protocols, or they might be physically inaccessible or incredibly costly to replace or service, like satellites or deeply embedded industrial equipment. Finding solutions for these legacy components will be a major headache. And as we've stressed before, the supply chain dependency is absolutely critical. An organization's PQC readiness is intrinsically linked to the readiness of its software vendors, cloud providers, and hardware suppliers. A single vulnerable third-party component or service can potentially compromise the entire chain. Managing this external dependency risk requires significant effort in vendor assessment and contract management.
Legacy systems and supply chain. Yeah, those sound like massive roadblocks.
They are. But here's where it gets truly fascinating and potentially offers a silver lining. This immense complexity and the undeniable cost associated with PQC migration, particularly for large, complex organizations, can actually be reframed. It can be seen as a powerful catalyst for overdue IT modernization. Think about it. The process of creating that comprehensive cryptographic inventory, Pillar 2, often forces an organization, maybe for the first time, to really confront the messy, tangled reality of its often undocumented and sprawling IT estate. Well, that system is still running that old protocol. Instead of viewing this solely as an insurmountable burden or just a compliance exercise, the PQC migration journey can be seen as a strategic opportunity. An opportunity to simplify and rationalize the IT environment, to improve overall cryptographic hygiene, getting rid of weak algorithms and short keys, to retire outdated legacy systems, and ultimately to build a more robust, agile, resilient, and well-documented infrastructure. Insights from agencies like CISA and the UK's NCSC suggest that this journey, while undeniably difficult and resource-intensive, ultimately positions organizations to better manage all types of cybersecurity risks, not just those specifically from quantum computing. It's a chance to really invest in and future-proof your entire digital operation using PQC as the forcing function.
That's a really valuable perspective, turning a massive challenge into a strategic opportunity for modernization. Has anything remotely like this happened before in the world of cryptography? Is there any kind of historical parallel we can draw on to help understand the scale of this cryptographic shift? Or is this truly unique territory?
That's a good question for context. We can indeed draw a useful, though imperfect, parallel to a previous major cryptographic transition. The migration from the data encryption standard, DES, to the advanced encryption standard, AES. DES was adopted as a U.S. federal standard back in 1977. But over time, as computational power increased relentlessly according to Moore's law, its relatively short 56-bit key length became increasingly vulnerable to brute force attacks. By the late 1990s, specialized hardware could break DES keys relatively quickly. This vulnerability prompted a global multi-year effort, again involving NIST, to select a replacement. This resulted in the adoption of AES, which offered much stronger security with key lengths of 128, 192, and 256 bits, ensuring long-term protection against classical brute force attacks. The world successfully migrated to ES over a number of years.
So we've done this kind of thing before. How does the PQC transition compare?
Well, while the DCT's migration was certainly a significant undertaking and demonstrated that even widely adopted cryptographic standards have a finite lifespan, it was primarily a contained change within the realm of symmetric key encryption. It was essentially about swapping out one strong symmetric algorithm, DES or later triple DES, for an even stronger symmetric algorithm. Yes, it was like upgrading the deadbolt on your door to a newer, more complex deadbolt, still the same fundamental mechanism. The PQC transition, by contrast, is far, far more complex and fundamentally different in scope. It primarily affects the entire public key cryptographic ecosystem, the asymmetric algorithms like RSA and ECC that underpin key exchange, digital signatures, and the whole PKI infrastructure. And it requires a shift to entirely new mathematical paradigms, moving away from number theory problems like factoring large numbers or solving discrete logarithms, towards completely different classes of problems based on lattices, hashes, error-correcting codes, or isogenies. Those specs showed the risks there. This is more like changing the entire locking mechanism of your house from a traditional key-based system to something completely different, like a biometric or challenge response system. It impacts everything from the protocols to the hardware to the software implementations. This fundamental shift makes the organizational, technical, logistical, and intellectual challenges of the PQC transition far more profound and pervasive than any previous cryptographic migration we've ever faced. It's truly in a different league of complexity.
That comparison really highlights the scale. So, if we're boiling this down to actionable advice, what must senior leaders, the executives, the board members, absolutely do to prepare their organizations for this existential threat, recognizing, as you said, that it's not just a technical IT problem anymore?
Absolutely. Given the strategic implications, action from the top is critical. For senior leaders, executives, and board members, there are a few key imperatives. First, they must make PQC a strategic priority. This means actively working to elevate the PQC transition from being perceived as just another technical IT project buried somewhere in the organization to being recognized and treated as a core business and enterprise risk management issue. They need to understand and articulate that the potential financial, reputational, legal, and operational costs of a data breach in the post-quantum era, especially due to harvested data being decrypted, could be catastrophic, particularly for industries holding sensitive, long-lived data. It needs board-level visibility and oversight.
Okay, make it strategic. What else?
Second, they need to fund and empower a PQC program office. This isn't something that can be done effectively off the side of someone's desk. They should formally appoint an executive-level PQC migration lead or program manager and establish a dedicated, appropriately resourced program office or steering committee. This team needs a defined budget, clear authority, and must include that diverse range of stakeholders we mentioned: IT, cybersecurity, procurement, legal, finance, risk, and crucially, representatives from key business units who understand the data involved. You can't just drop this massive undertaking on your existing IT team's lap without providing the proper structure, funding, and authority.
Right. Resources and structure are key. Anything else for the top level?
And third, they must mandate supply chain readiness. Leaders need to recognize that the supply chain represents a critical vulnerability vector for PQC risk. You can do everything right internally but still be exposed by a vendor. Therefore, they should direct their procurement and legal teams to update policies, standard contract language, and vendor risk assessment processes to include explicit requirements related to PQC. This means asking vendors about their PQC roadmap, requiring demonstrations of crypto agility in their products and services, and ensuring contractual commitments to use NIST-approved algorithms within defined timelines as they become available and stable. Your organizational security posture is only as strong as your weakest external link, and leadership needs to drive that accountability through the supply chain.
That's clear advice for the leadership. Now, what about for those on the front lines, the Cybersecurity and IT leadership, the people who actually have to implement this, what are the most critical, actionable steps they should be taking immediately, starting today?
For those in cybersecurity and IT leadership roles, the boots on the ground who have to make this happen, there are two immediate and absolutely critical actions to prioritize, building on those pillars we discussed. First, build the cryptographic inventory now. Don't wait. Start the discovery process immediately. Leverage automated discovery tools where possible, supplement with manual investigation, and aim to create a comprehensive living inventory of all cryptographic assets across the organization. Algorithms, keys, certificates, protocols, libraries, dependencies, and the systems using them. And crucially, this isn't just about listing things. You need to prioritize this inventory based on the sensitivity and the required confidentiality lifetime of the data being protected by each cryptographic instance. Focus first on identifying and assessing those systems protecting the long-lived, high-value assets to directly mitigate that harvest now, decrypt later threat. This inventory is the essential map for your entire migration journey.
Get the map first. What's the second immediate action?
Second, adopt crypto agility by design. Start embedding the principle of crypto agility into your development processes and architectural standards now. All new system development, all new applications being built or procured should incorporate crypto agility as a core design principle from day one. Make it easy to swap out algorithms and protocols later. This is your best insurance policy against future cryptographic breaks or the need to adopt newer standards down the line. For existing systems where full crypto agility might be harder to retrofit, the focus should be on planning for those hybrid deployments we talked about. Implement solutions that can combine classical and PQC algorithms as an interim step during the transition. This ensures ongoing security while maintaining backward compatibility and functionality, providing a smoother path forward. It's about building preparedness for a continuously evolving cryptographic landscape, not just a single point-in-time change.
Okay, inventory and agility. That seems like a solid starting point for the technical teams. So bring this all together. What does this complex picture really mean for us? We've unpacked this dual-edged sword of distributed quantum computing, recognizing its incredible power for potential good, but also its fundamental role in accelerating this huge cryptographic threat we're facing. We've highlighted the chilling and very present-day reality of harvest now, decrypt later, which is frankly quite disturbing. And we've also seen the massive, urgent, coordinated global response led by NIST, involving governments and industry worldwide in developing and starting to implement post-quantum cryptography. It's a really complex picture, definitely, but the path forward, while challenging, is becoming clearer.
Absolutely. The convergence of distributed quantum computing's rise and the critical need for post-quantum cryptography really marks an undeniable watershed moment. It's a turning point in the history of technology, information security, and even international relations. And while the primary driver for PQC is mitigating a potentially catastrophic threat, it's also crucial to frame this transition, as we discussed, as an unprecedented opportunity. It's a chance to build a more robust, more agile, more resilient, and ultimately more trustworthy digital infrastructure for the future. By understanding the risks, planning strategically using frameworks like those 5 pillars, and acting now, organizations, governments, and even individuals can secure their place in the coming quantum era. They can transform what looks like a daunting challenge into a strategic advantage that will serve them well for decades to come.
That's a great way to frame it, not just defense, but opportunity. As we look ahead then, and consider those really long confidentiality lifetimes required for some of our most sensitive data, everything from your personal health records or your kids' genetic information to decades of national security secrets to the foundational intellectual property of companies. This whole deep dive raises, I think, a really important final question for you, our listener, to ponder. In a world where we now know that future quantum computers could potentially unlock past encrypted data harvested today, what does secure for the long term truly mean anymore? How does this looming capability challenge our very concept of digital memory, digital permanence, and the enduring power, or perhaps fragility, of secrets themselves in the quantum age? Something to think about as we all step, ready or not, into this quantum-powered future.